So thank you for joining us for the MicroAge Talks Technology webinar today. We're going to be talking about reducing the cybersecurity risk by having a layered approach to cybersecurity. This is a first of a series of 3 webinars that will focus on the different cybersecurity layers. Today, our focus will be on the first 2 layers, people and the perimeter. My name is Maria Fiore. I'm the Director of Operations for MicroAge, and I'm joined by Sergio Lima, Director of Customer Success at MicroAge. So welcome, Sergio.
Hello everyone.
So before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. Oh, that's us.
No, sorry. Next. Okay.
Yeah, so just if you haven't noticed, all attendees are muted, mainly to reduce the background noise. Also, having done these several webinars now with Sergio, I know that he enjoys answering questions, so please ask questions throughout the presentation by using the questions panel of the webinar tool, which is normally found on the right-hand side of the tool. The webinar is being recorded and the recording will be sent to you within the next 24 hours for your review or to share with people you think would benefit from listening in. In the same email, you will receive the link to download the free ebook that we're making available to you. And lastly, at the end of the webinar, you will be receiving a short 3-question survey to gather your feedback on the webinar. Your feedback is important to us. It helps us improve our webinars and improve future webinars. So just want to thank you in advance for taking a few seconds to respond to the survey. So before handing things over to Sergio, I'll take just a moment to give you a brief overview of MicroAge for those who may not know us. MicroAge is a Canadian technology service provider with 38 locations across Canada. We've been providing IT services and solutions to our clients since 1981. Our approach is simple and is based on one key area, which is understanding your business. We want to understand your operations, your goals, your challenges, your opportunities, so that understanding all of that helps us recommend and provide the IT services and solutions that are right for you and your organization. That, in a few words, is our why. So with that, Sergio, I pass it on to you.
Thank you, Maria. Hello everyone. Thank you for attending. Like Maria said, this is a series of 3 webinars that will be touching the layers of security. There are in total 6 layers that we'll show you. But for this session, we'll be focusing on what you see on the outer layers, which are the people and the perimeter. And just before that, we'll take a look at the cybersecurity landscape, some stats, the importance of asset management, which is kind of like why is that topic there? We'll explain why. And we'll move on to some questions. Feel free to ask your questions at any given time. We can answer that as we move along. So let's start with some stats. Canadian stats. So the amount of data collected on Canadians today is significant. I mean, it'll only increase as new technologies enter the main street. It creates a wealth of opportunities for threat actors to looking at stealing, your personal information. Hybrid workforce, work from anywhere creates a larger threat surface where these cyber criminals can just access organizations or individuals' networks and devices. Business networks are now becoming integrated into the employees' homes, into public spaces. And obviously, the cyber criminals are very likely to continue to exploit anything that's related to hybrid work and targeting employees that work from home. Why? Because the chance of the security solutions in place at a home network is typically less than what we would have in our networks. So that I guess is the biggest vector for these criminals to try and exploit and then eventually get into your network. Interesting stat on the first one, the 89.9% of Canadians or organizations reported that they had been victims of some kind of a cyber attack. Those are the ones that have actually reported it, because I'm sure it's more than that. And we did have the webinar this morning. We were just curious to see what last year's results were, because this is 2022, and then 2021 results were 85-ish%.
Yeah.
So it has gone up. Online activity has gone up, obviously. Increased remote work. And the fact that only 23% of Canadians would be willing to work, at their business, and so in other words, 77% still want to work from home, which again raises that that bar for trying to implement some security measures across the board, including your remote work. And whether we like it or not, internet use is just going to keep going up. We depend on that on a regular basis.
We
Everything we
live
do.
online, right? We
Yeah,
do everything online. So
that's right. Yeah. So again, with the similar stats, there's been a lot of supply chain attacks. There's also been a lot of attacks focused targeting MSPs, so managed services providers, IT providers. Why? Because the criminals know that if they can get into their networks, they can essentially get into all of their customers' networks. So it gives them a nice little tunnel for them to do as they please within your network. So it's important if you're in the process of shopping for an MSP or an IT provider. It's important to know that you need to do a bit of homework. Like, have they implemented all of the security measures on their end? So that one, are they secure? And two, that the criminals can't use their tools to get into your network. So it's something to think about in case you're questioning the security level of your MSPs right now.
that, but that can apply to anybody, right? Any
Yeah,
service partner that you're dealing with, and sometimes
correct.
they're smaller providers that say, well, I have nothing of value. Why would they want to target me? And it's maybe not you that they're targeting. Maybe it's your customer. So you may be 5, 10, 20 user company who makes, I don't know, screws for
Yeah,
something, and bigger customers are buying those screws from you because they're made of something that's important to them. Or I mean, I obviously don't know anything about that, but they may not be
yeah,
really interested in your information, but they are interested in your customers information, and so they'll target you. So it could apply to a law firm, it could apply to financial investment institution, for example. I mean, it applies to any kind of service partner. So
yeah.
yeah,
It's a comment that comes up often with some customers saying, "Why would they attack me? I'm 10 users or 10 employees." But they're maybe not. You're not their target. Their target is maybe one of your customers. So, like you said, if you're making screws for
widgets. Let's call them widgets.
yeah, you're making widgets for the Department of Defense. Well, guess what? They're going to use your network to get into anything they can, so they can in turn figure out how they can get into where they really want to go.
And our
So,
hope is that the Department of Defense is doing their due diligence and making
yeah,
sure
well,
that
I
whoever
mean,
they're dealing with,
yeah,
yeah,
in that
yeah.
case, they probably did their homework, right, to make sure that you have all the right security features in place. So,
But nothing's guaranteed, as we know.
no,
So
no, exactly. And obviously, ransomware continues to grow, frauds, scams, malicious cyber threats, phishing, everything. 150,000 fraud reports in Canada, $600 million worth of stolen valuables, I guess,
money.
whether it's money, whether it's, reported downtime, your business is down for that period of time, you lost your revenue, a lot of money lost with this. And obviously the current geopolitical and any new technologies that are coming in, mainly artificial intelligence, that could be a bigger factor, possibly for the cyber criminals to use and exploit you even more. Because if they can get their hands on some kind of AI technology that'll let them do the hack for them, they'll just sit back and have a coffee and let the machines do the work for them.
It's a tool. You can use it for
Yeah,
good or for bad.
exactly. Exactly. So today we're talking about the first two outer layers of our cybersecurity layers. There are people, perimeter, network, endpoint, data, and your company. When I mean your company, it means things like, do you have proper policies in place? Are you ready for a cybersecurity event, an incident that may occur? Do you have the right plan in place? Do you know who to call? Do you have, are mechanisms in place for disaster recovery, business continuity, et cetera? That's the company side. Everything else ends up being some sort of a solution that we could implement, or some form of solutions that you can put it within your environment. And obviously the first layer, which is your weakest link, is the people, the employees that you have. Unfortunately, is not an actual product that you can buy to improve the awareness of your people. It's something that you'd have to train and it's pretty much train your people to be aware of what's happening in the cybersecurity landscape. So I had mentioned the fact about asset inventory and management. Why is this so important? Um, a lot of times we encounter environments where we're supposedly managing a certain number of devices. And the reason why we want to know every single device that is on that network is because we try as an MSP to secure these environments with patching, with antivirus, with security measures, proactive measures. Um, a lot of proactive work and a lot of monitoring is involved in ensuring that these workstations, servers, firewalls, anything that's connected to your IT is protected as best as we can. And when you have rogue devices or new machines and we're not aware of it, it leaves that opening for those criminals to exploit and possibly get into your network. So it's extremely important to have a handle of all of your assets and inventory. Anything that with regards to an IP address that's connected to your network, it's important to know, are we monitoring it? Is it protected? And if it can't be protected, are we putting something in place that can minimize the risk?
Yeah, and we've seen, Sergio, where, sometimes an asset is deactivated or decommissioned. However, it's still connected to the network, and so
Correct.
unfortunately, the bad guys do find those, and it could
Yep.
cause some real problems because everybody forgot about that particular
Yep.
device or
Yeah.
unit or whatever it is that is in a closet somewhere that has dust all over it and nobody ever opened it for the last 10 years, right? But
Yeah, you
it's
can,
still there and it's still connected.
that's right.
So
A device that's no longer being used because that employee's not there anymore. There's no need for it right now. You put it in a closet. 6 months later, you turn it back on. You don't advise anybody. It's not patched and it's not up to date, and it's a possible risk for your environment. And obviously, this is one of the first questions that cyber insurance companies ask. And that's the reason why they ask, do you have an inventory of all your devices? Because they need to be sure that you know exactly what devices you have in your network.
it's important.
So,
It's important to understand the devices, how they connect, how they interact with each other, what kind of data is on there. I mean, all of those things, right?
yep. So we'll talk about people and perimeter. Let's do first step, authentication. On the people side, authentication covers a couple of topics. The first one we're addressing is the password. So password hygiene is incredibly important. You may or may not have seen this type of grid that is available on the internet. We have a link possibly that you can have. I think Maria, did you copy
Just
that in
pasting
the?
it now. Yeah,
There
I'm
you
putting it
go.
in the chat. Yeah.
So this is a grid that shows you how long it'll take for a hacker to find your password with the tools that they have in place, as far as we know right now. This thing changes constantly. A couple of years ago, the I guess the most common number of characters that we've seen in passwords right now is 8 characters. It was good maybe 2 years ago. It's not good anymore. And if you look at the 8 characters, even if you're running a sequence of lowercase, uppercase, a number, and a character, which is considered, I guess, a complex password or a complex 8 character password, it can be hacked in 39 minutes, whereas a couple of years ago it was maybe several thousand years. The improvement, the evolution of the tools that the cyber criminals are using is just making it much more easier to go in with 8 characters and even 9 or 10 characters. So right now, the best practice or the recommended number of characters for passwords is 12. A lot of manufacturers, a lot of vendors are recommending 12 with complex. So minimum, lowercase, uppercase, character, number, but it's got to be 12 characters. And with the 12 characters, obviously the tools that they use it'll take them several thousand years to get that through. That's not to say that that'll be good for the rest of the year, because we can probably have an updated grill in a couple of months, and it'll say that, instead of 3,000 years, it'll probably take what was it here for 12? Instead of 3,000 years, it'll probably take maybe 1,000 years or something. So
Well,
something to
but
note out. It's a good tool. It's a good link, actually.
yeah, it's a good example. I mean, just a year ago, 10 characters, complex, let's say, upper characters, numbers, all of that stuff, was taking, I forget what the year, but it was like, I don't know, like 34 years or whatever. And,
Yeah.
a year later is 5 months. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
crazy.
Watch when AI kicks in. That's not going to
Uh,
be good. So let's look a little bit more on the password side. So create strong passwords. Like I said, minimum 12 characters. Um, Separate your work and personal passwords. So what I mean by that is don't have the same password or a variance of the same password across the board. And also don't have your email addresses for personal use. Don't have your business email address for personal use. So I wouldn't use my company email address to be logging into my Bell account for to pay my Bell bills or and whatnot. I'd use a a Gmail account or a Microsoft Live account, something that is outside of your work related email. Why? You just want to make it difficult for cyber criminals to hack. If they can hack in one side and you're using the same credentials and same user login, it's just easier for them to get across the board. They'll potentially exploit a website that has your credentials on it that you have no power to you have no control over this website, and they'll get that info and then eventually use it to log into your own network. With that, um, obviously creates the dilemma of having many passwords, different variety. Um, that's a lot of passwords to store in your head. So we're looking at things like putting password managers in place. Simple software, a couple of bucks a month can help protect your credentials across the board. Um, that's
Sergio, I saw a stat just a few months ago that said on average, a normal human has about 80 passwords that they have to manage.
yeah,
80.
yeah. So imagine keeping 80 passwords, 80 complex 12-character passwords in your head. It's just impossible.
I can't
So we,
remember what I had for breakfast. I don't know how I'm
yeah,
supposed to remember
exactly.
80
So we
passwords.
recommend using a password manager, a password vault, simple to work with. It works with all the browsers. It works on your laptop, desktop. It works on all your mobile devices, and it's just so much easier to get stuff done. It'll auto generate some 12-character passwords that you don't even know what it is, and then you can authenticate. Let's say on phones, you can do the biometric stuff, or it's a PIN that you can enter. It's just easier. It just makes it easier to not have to remember all these passwords. Try not to recycle your passwords. I know there were recommendations where after a certain number of passwords, you can go back to the original. Try and extend it as much as possible. There's no real rule on when or how many passwords you have to go cycle through before you can start reusing. But at least 5. I would even say get to 10 before you start looking at thinking of going back to the original passwords. And then audit your accounts on a regular basis. So if you're a network admin or you manage any kind of application, SaaS application services, just ensure that do you have any accounts that are stale or are still there that are active for employees that are not there anymore? Um, Even the ones that are not active, are they still there? Why are they there? Like, can you do something to get rid of that? So it just adds another point of entry for these hackers to get in, because it's well known that once they get in, they can use inactive accounts and reactivate them and just go about their way within your network without you even knowing.
So Sergio, this morning, one of the
Yes.
questions that was asked, you were talking, we had a similar webinar this morning in French. One of the questions was, well, how safe are password managers? And the person mentioned, there was a ton of articles, I don't know, I guess late last year about LastPass being hacked and all of that stuff. So what would be your opinion on that?
So no security solution is 100% proof, right? You will never find any vendor, manufacturer, any company that will tell you that their product is 100% secure. There is always a way to get into that. um, but think about it. If you wouldn't put any of these things in place, your risk level would be so much higher. So yeah, you don't want a password manager. Okay, well, try and remember your passwords. You're not going to do that. So you're going to use a variance of the same password, and you're going to use the same email. And then that just leaves you open for hackers to get in and do what they please. So obviously, I'd rather have the 0.1% of a password app being hacked than the 99% chance of you being hacked just because you have the same password across all of your systems.
Yeah, there's an evaluation,
Yeah.
what could happen and what the benefits and the cost could be, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. So then we'll move on to the multi-factor authentication. So, I mean, the criminals, once they get that information from your passwords, um, they can then use that to log into your systems. So if you're using, for example, a VPN connection into your network, many moons ago, VPN was adequate. It was good enough to ensure that you were connecting to your network in a secure fashion to access your data, access your applications. What's happening now is that because criminals are able to get your credentials, they're pretty much logging in as you. So how can the systems validate and verify that it's really you logging into your network? And that's where the MFA comes into effect. Is implement an MFA solution or 2FA solution that allows the systems to validate whether it's actually you who's connecting to this network. So similar to how banks, when you log in and you have a code, it's the same thing. So if you're VPNing into your network, you'll be asked with some sort of a code or an application that gives you a pop-up on your portable phone. Is that really you logging in? Accept or deny. These are common things right now we're putting in place everywhere. And again, this is another point that comes up with cyber insurers. They ask you if you have this in place. Why? Because we can't assume that the user logging in is an actual employee. It could very well be with malicious intent with a cyber criminal. So that's the goal of the MFA. And again, I talked about the VPN, but you can have maybe you have remote users that don't require VPN into your network because they're using Microsoft 365 and they're using emails and Word and Excel and they're connecting directly, so they don't need to connect to your network. But you still need to apply some form of MFA because you need to make sure that it's that actual user that's connecting. Again, credentials could be stolen. They'll install their instance of M365 and they'll attempt to log in as that user. If there's no 2FA, they're pretty much getting into all your emails and all of your data. So it's not only VPN, it's not only Microsoft 365, it's any kind of SaaS application. If you have SaaS applications that you're using, do your research, see if you can activate 2FA in some shape, way, or form by the vendor on their site. And if you have applications that do not offer any kind of MFA, and you see that there is a risk because there's an outside connection to that, then you seriously need to do a bit of research to see how you can either isolate it, limit the exposure, or flat out do some research and potentially change that application if you deem it to be a risk.
There's a couple of things you said there. When you talked about the cyber insurance and or insurers and MFA, I'm sure you've been through this, or organizations are going through this, where they get a form that they have to fill out and stuff like that, and they ask, do you have MFA? It's a pretty general question, but you have to be really specific about how you answer it. So, you want to make sure you tell them, I have MFA on, M365, I have MFA on VPN, I have MFA on my, I don't know, financial
Yeah.
application or whatever. Just be specific, because they can come back and say, well, you told me you had MFA, but turns out you don't have MFA on this.
That's
And
right.
that's how
Yeah.
they got in. So you got to be careful with that. The other thing about MFA that I was reading about was, CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency in the U.S. They put out a notice or whatever that said that, MFA reduces by 99% the possibility of being hacked. So I mean, you know, it's a good thing to have, especially if the
Notice
data you're wanting to
notice the
access is
yeah.
important. Yeah,
Notice the 99% and not the 100%. Again, nothing is 100%, right?
nothing is 100%. No.
But I'd rather have 99%, secure
Mm,
than 1% secure. So, um, it's another reason why the asset inventory was important.
yes.
When they ask for your assets, it's not only devices, it's the applications that you have installed and the
Mhm.
SaaS applications and anything that is being accessed by employees, internal and external. That's an inventory for them. And if you give them that list, they'll be asking you whether you can or have implemented 2FA on all of these devices or all of these services.
Virtual servers.
Yep. Yep.
All of that are
You
assets.
know, a
Yeah.
CRM that you're running off of a SaaS application CRM. Like, I mean, there's so many out there, right? Salesforce, let's say, that's I guess, the most popular one, right?
Mhm.
I know they have 2FA within their system. So if you're a partner, or if you're subscribed to Salesforce, obviously, you can activate your 2FA for all your users that are accessing the CRM. So that's a good example of what we're saying. So it'll keep your employees from becoming that major risk or their weakest link. It adds that second layer of validation or verification to ensure that it is your employee and not someone else, which in turn protects your data or guards your data against any theft. And you may or may not be part of some kind of compliance standards, which will force you to put 2FA on all of these systems.
But in any case, if you're looking for cybersecurity insurance, they're gonna ask for this. So
That's right. Yeah. So empowerment. How do we empower our people? Because we can't replace them if if they're if they're a risk. You can't just replace someone. You educate them. So there's we have programs out there called Cyber. Think Before You Click is what we call it. It's cybersecurity awareness training and phishing simulations. So we run across a 12-month campaign where we will be phishing your employees, getting results, figuring out the click rate or the number of clickers percentage, and then working on a library of content and training videos and interactive videos that are all online, and your employees can learn and be a little bit more aware of things to spot when receiving emails that seem a little strange. If they're coming at different times of the day, or if it just looks like something that's wrong. Think before clicking, right? That's the goal. So it's an entire program the goal is pretty much to start your baseline phishing at the beginning, provide some training, continue with some more phishing, see if they learned anything. If they didn't, we give them more training, and so on until the end of the mandate. And the goal is just to reduce the number of clickers. And Maria, you mentioned this morning, it's not something that you do one time and it's over. Unfortunately, you have to repeat this process with everyone, because as humans we tend to forget, right? So you have to, it's just by repeating and continuously learning that you will eventually get better at, or more vigilant at this process.
plus there are changes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So you have to be on top of these changes, and a lot of the times these systems will incorporate some new things that are coming up in the cybersecurity landscape to help you out, right? So um,
yeah.
plus
As the cyber landscape evolves, the training content evolves as well, because in 6 months from now there may be half of the topics that are irrelevant and there's new ones that are put in place, so it needs to stay valid. And obviously what that does is it becomes reduces your weakest link theory, and it gives a little bit more. Your staff becomes a little bit more confident. They're not worried about something clicking or not clicking. Hopefully, oh, I'm sorry, there's some French in there.
I was going to say we found the translation that we were looking for. Sorry
Yes,
about that,
yes,
guys.
yes. So the second one is the saving money and time. So you have your front line of defense, which are your employees. If they're not clicking on anything malicious, then you have a less of a chance of being hit by a cyber criminal, which obviously if you get hit by a cyber criminal, it starts to cost a little bit of money. Whether you're paying fees, ransom, or you're paying insurance or lawyers, or just in general loss of revenue because you've been down for X amount of time. And it improves your security because you've added that extra layer, which is sort of like it's not really a hardware or software solution, but it's a people solution.
And one of the things, I mean, we do it as well, right? We do the training, and the topics are, there's a lot of topics. They cover things like password hygiene and what's best practices. They
Yep.
cover privacy. They cover, it's not just phishing, right? That there's a whole, security is a big
Yep.
topic, right? And there's different
Yep.
topics that they cover and that you learn from, and
Yep.
it's enlightening.
Yeah, they cover remote work. They cover airports, what to do in airports and cafes, Wi-Fi connections. They cover sharing of files, sensitive
Yep.
data, email etiquettes, a slew of topics that are very relevant for all of our employees that do this on a daily basis. It's fun.
Yeah, actually,
So
yeah, you're right.
yeah,
You learn things.
yeah. So let's move on to the next layer. It's once we've protected our first layer with people, and empowering them with training, and being more aware. We'll take a look at the perimeter. Now, I'm hoping that a lot of you have already put some of these things in place. If not, we should you should seriously look at the first two at least. And when we say firewall, it's not a router. A router was very it's very outdated 20 years ago. So ensure that you have the proper firewall, some form of a next gen firewall, as they call it, that has all of the threat features involved. So intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, some web filtering, some anti-spam, antivirus, all built into that appliance. These are some of the best firewalls that you can put in place to get that first level perimeter protection. And it'll stop a lot of that from coming in. Now, not to be confused with a spam filter, because some firewalls say they do anti-spam, they'll do it at a certain level. But if you want a real spam filter, you can't do it through your firewall. You have to have some form of an anti-spam solution. Lots of products out there, and its sole goal is to look at all of the incoming and outgoing emails and to ensure that there is no malicious content, and try and, I guess, filter your spam away so you get the emails that belong to you and not. But again, nothing's 100%, which means you may get that one or two, three emails that come through. And those are the ones that the employees are clicking on. So you'd have to rely on that first part of the layer, and hoping that they've been trained properly and they can see it. And then as a form of a proactive approach, it's the dark web monitoring. So if ever you have credentials that were stolen from a third-party website company, obviously you've been logging into different places and different partners and customers' sites and personal. They may not have adequate security. They may have been hacked. Your credentials may have been exported, and they may be on sale on the dark web for someone else to buy, and in turn come into your network using your credentials. So the dark web monitoring will not stop that from happening because it's out of your control. But what it does is it gives you reports and alerts based on any of your credentials that are possibly out there for sale on the dark web, and it'll advise you. So you can be a little bit more proactive, right? You can see your emails or credentials or passwords were compromised. You can go into your network and start to reset passwords and change a few things, and possibly avoid a future attack onto your network. And the final test is more of let's put these three measures in place, and then let's outsource a specialized security firm that can do a penetration test to ensure that everything you've put in place is bulletproof or almost bulletproof, 99% bulletproof, right? So these companies are specialized in this. They'll try and get into your network, and then they'll give you a report with some recommendations, corrective measures, and that's a snapshot in time, obviously. So this is something that I recommend you have done on a yearly basis. Because as the months go by, maybe you have people that do changes to your firewall policies and stuff, and that's what once a year is good to have a test just to ensure that no ports are open and there's no way for any of these hackers to get into your environment.
Going back to the firewall, when we were preparing for this, you were telling me, one of the things that is really important is making sure that the firewalls are configured properly, that the policies are still relevant, that there's work and that goes into these firewalls. They don't just set it and walk away.
Right.
That's
Yeah, they're called firewall policies. So when we configure firewalls, and I'm not going to be technical, when we configure firewalls, there's a bunch of policies. It's all conditional access. So if someone is coming in, if it's a authenticated user, then let them in and give them access to only such and such a service. If something else is coming in and it needs access to this server, don't let it have access, etc. So these are policies that are created in the firewall. But as you manage your firewall and start to add, there's always a request, an exception. Let's add another policy, let's add another policy. And then 10, 15 policies later, you won't even realize it, but you may have put a policy in place that does the anti or the opposite of what your first 9 or 14 policies have put in place, and just lets everything in. So we've seen that. So it's important to do a validation of that, not to have too many policies. and ensure you do some kind of a penetration test, because that'll tell you right away. So layers. We did the people, we did the perimeter, but we will do in the next 2 seminars across the next few months, network and endpoint, and the data and the company. Are we doing that as is, Maria? Network and endpoint together, or we haven't
Yeah.
decided, I guess?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
network and endpoint, and
So
then the
network
data
endpoint,
and
and then the third one will be data and company. So
yeah.
people and perimeter are the outer layers, obviously, but we are looking at the other the other layers in the next few months. I will hope that helped. I will pass the mic over to Maria for the free ebook.
Yeah, so as we promised, we are making a free ebook that really sort of takes you through everything we talked about today. Maybe get a little bit more detail on it, but that's what the ebook is about. You don't have to furiously write the link to the ebook. You can. I just put it in the chat, so if you wanted to download it, you can go and get the link and download that. If you have any questions while we wrap this up, please put them in the questions panel so that we can answer your questions. But in the meantime, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today, and I do encourage you to download the ebook. And if you have any questions, reach out to your local microage. They'd be more than happy to answer your questions or help you with everything that you need. We do hope to see you for our next microage talks technology on May 18th. This is a webinar that we put on about twice a year. We talked about cybersecurity awareness and training. This is one that we do for our customers that sort of takes you through how do we call it, how to catch a fish. So recognizing phishing attempts and then testing your phishing skills with we have a little game we call Fish or Legit. So we hope that you can join us for that. And like Sergio said, we will have additional webinars on the layers of cybersecurity. The second one is in June, and then we take a little break in the summertime and come back in September with the third one. So we hope just to keep an eye out for the invitations, and we look forward to seeing you there. So I am not seeing any more questions coming in. So with that, once again, Sergio, thank you. You're always enlightening with the presentation, so I appreciate that. And thank you all for spending the last, I guess, 45 minutes with us. And we hope that the webinar was of value to you. With that, I'd like to wish everybody a great rest of day. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to microage. We'd be more than happy to help you with anything that you might have questions about.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.